My name is Sayan, and I'm not from this country actually. This conversation is reminding me of the the very prevalent discourse that the United States is in many ways an exceptional country in that it's founded. So the narrative goes on the idea of the endless frontier and rugged individualism and so forth. And when I read the newspaper, you see things such as 20% of the population in this country believe that they belong to the top 1% economically. So people are hugely, suffer from what used to be called false consciousness at one point. So my question to you is that, as a historian, is this kind of false consciousness, if you call it that, is this unprecedented? Or have there been times and places in the past where such a massive deficit of understanding has existed, and yet people eventually have emerged out of that? So are we in some kind of a trough from which there may not be an exit because too many people are already deluded too deeply for historical reasons, perhaps, in the that have to do with how this country has evolved over time, and the myths and narratives that inform and underlie people's thinking? Or is this something that too will pass, and has in the history of the world there have been instances where people have succeeded in defeating such.
Let me give you another
things.
narrative. I think everyone in the room knows, especially Colleen, a historian, that the United States is a terrorist state, a state of violence, has been so since 1787 at least, responsible for the genocide of an indigenous population and organizing international slave trade. These are the fundamental characteristics of a settler society, of which the United States is one. So I want to put to you, there are many narratives in the United States. We have a lot of narratives, and the narrative that you accounted is only one of them. It's the ruling narrative. And of course, everyone here is also has suffered it. It's drummed into, it's over and over again on television, on, I don't know about the internet so much, on schools, and we've all learned to revolt against it, and we've discovered other narratives. So I think that's something. For me, the reason why I asked you to read not the last chapter, but the chapter before the last one in Magna Carta Manifesto is I wanted just to remind everyone and put into economic terms how the Native American struggle, the African American struggle, the struggle of immigrant workers, the struggle of women, and the struggle of the industrial worker have composed the U.S. working class historically. And the economic terms is that our ecology, our infrastructure, our economy, our community, and our reproduction have been based on the struggles of those groups. Within that struggle, I sought for when did those groups refer to Magna Carta? That was the theme of this book, is just a tendentious. But it did provide some clues, I hope, to other narratives which are widely recognized. We have a job to do. You don't think that slavery came down just because of one revolt. Slavery came down for years. There were people like Libby Hunter singing. She sings to the local bourgeoisie. We sang against slavery. We sang against totalitarianism in the American South. This went on for decades. That's just singing in churches. Then there's study. There's agitation, there's soapboxing. There are a lot of ways that other narratives are maintained. Now, I'm speaking, Brian, from the seat of my pants, because as a historian, this is what I want to find. This is what I want to find, and if it's not there, I'm going to find it. And if you don't find it, you're not looking hard enough. Okay, I mean, our country now has so many people from India, from the South Asia. Here, it's just like in the 90s, we had so many people who came from Central America, providing such experience, such knowledge for us. The United States, the best part of our trade union movement, of our political movement, of our anti-slavery movement, of our women's movement, have come from migrants, have come from immigrants, who have brought to this hideous, puritanical, prudish, repressive settler society alternatives from around the world. And this is part of us. And this is one of the things we preserve once we find it. And it's one of the reasons we're students. Yeah?
Well, still, there's another question here, and that is there a historical precedent for the kind of political narcissism that we find in this society now, which was worked out by some other society in the past? In other words, have people gotten themselves out of this paradox of complacency that we find around us, that we can't activate the people from within?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been, like today and this week, I've been reading about this period from 1690 to 1725 in English history. When there's these bigwigs, this is a time of conquest of India, of Ireland, of Jamaica. The Bank of England is established, the lottery, the recoinage. This is the time that English philosophy, like John Locke and Isaac Newton, they're torturing people, because they clip the coins. This is a time of 200 capital offenses are passed. It's a time when the levelers and diggers are finished. The best you could do is to, escape, to get out. So this is a very repressive period, in other words, where the best, anything critical was always ironic. It wasn't, it was always kind of, ironic. And it was in those conditions that Jack Shepherd, was this flame. He flamed. But I think our period is much richer than that. I think we have much more. And I don't, Gordon, so that's another period that's similar. I'm sure there are many others. It's now that again, this is romantic, because for Shelley, the term revolution, he used the term a phantom. And Matt, my teacher, Edward Thompson, he spoke about the spirit of freedom. He said, what do you think happened in the U.S., Edward? He said, well, I think the spirit of freedom has moved to Africa. It's conversation 1972. And is this Marxist political analysis? Not as I understood it, but he was speaking out of a romantic tradition, where there's a human spirit that moves. Are we taught this in history? No. In other tradition, maybe in literature, you were. It's easier for you to speak in such a way, but yeah. So that I don't think the spirit moves around the world that way. I don't think there's one phantom, but certainly. Yeah, I'll stop there.